Hello and welcome to Ready Start Podcast. I'm your host, Carter Fernandez. I'm a university student studying a Bachelor's of Serious Games Design and specialising in programming at the University of the Sunshine Coast, Queensland, Australia. Today I'll be joined by...
Bryce Kiefer. I'm a gameplay programmer at Gameloft.
And the question of the day is, what game do you have the most hours played in?
That would be StarCraft 2. I think I've played maybe 2,300-ish games now, and I'm still mediocre, but I love it. So good.
Oh, I think mine would have to be tied between either Pokemon Diamond, 2,500 hours, or 15 years of World of Warcraft. All right, and this is the podcast. Hello.
Hi.
So to start off, I'd ask, are there any limitations to programming for mobile devices that drove you to be more creative with your solutions?
Well, so I'm a gameplay programmer, so most of the stuff I write, it doesn't have to scale a lot. So not especially, which is nice. But like something like graphics programmers and artists especially, they absolutely have to think about cutting down their work constantly to meet the limitations of a mobile device. So less trees or better techniques for rendering and things like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have to do that. But yeah, gameplay, mostly it's, you write it and then it doesn't really have to scale from what you write to something bigger. And so it's pretty good in that respect. I don't generally have to do too much to cater for the limitations for mobile devices, thankfully.
Oh, that's good. I have to ask, how important is experience in specific programming languages when it comes to looking for jobs in games?
So I think the most popular languages for game dev specifically are probably C++ and C#. The core features of most languages are pretty interchangeable, pretty much the same. So if you know one, you can sort of pick up others pretty easily, especially if you learn a low-level language like C++. You generally, C# has some bells and whistles on the end, but its core functionality is pretty derivative of C and C++. So I'd say it's rather than learning a specific language, it's better to be able to learn new languages and technologies. Like that would be a good skill, instead of focusing on a specific language.
Mm-hmm. So you're at Gameloft now.
That's right.
But before joining there, you worked on your own mobile game, Blast Ops. Did you begin work on Blast Ops with the goal of seeking employment as a mobile game developer?
So with Blast Ops, honestly, I just got out of uni and I just had so much energy and I wanted to write a game. So I'd written projects in the past, but mostly they were too big in scope. So I was like, okay, so I'm gonna set my goal here of just writing something that I would love to play and that it also is pretty easy to make, or at least doable for me. So it wasn't really my goal to seek employment using this game, but as it turns out, having a cool project, it really helped in getting noticed as a graduate, because there are a lot of graduates in game dev, but there's not that many jobs, especially in Brisbane. So it really helped there, getting my first job.
Very competitive industry, especially here in Australia.
Yeah.
And do you feel that mobile games will eventually catch up to console and PC games? Will cloud gaming be the end of traditional mobile gaming design?
So mobile games actually already dominate the video game industry. I think nearly 50% of the market share is mobile in the video games industry. In terms of gameplay depth, though, I think mobile is very limited by the lack of tactile feedback on a touch screen. So there's only so much you can do with that. And also you putting your fingers on the play space is difficult to make games for that, because you're sacrificing screen real estate for your input. So you really have to work in mechanics that work well with that. So you're also limited by the time someone can play games as well. So if they're on a train, they don't want to get too in depth with their game because they have to get off and disengage really quickly. But yeah, so that's a limitation. But with the release of services like Apple Arcade and Google Play Pass, yeah, I'd personally love to see a shift in the monetization strategies of mobile gaming. So if you're unfamiliar, they're like sort of Netflix for games. So you pay a subscription fee and you get access to a whole library of games. Both of those services sort of offer that. And they're premium games too. So you don't pay any in-app purchases for them, which is nice. I think that's really cool. And those are the games that I would like to personally make. So I would like to see a shift in monetization and therefore the gameplay mechanics of mobile games, because they're intermingled, those two. So with regard to cloud-based streaming services, I'm personally skeptical about them just because there's an implied latency between sort of the user putting an input and an action appearing on screen, because you're processing that in the cloud, right? So I set an input, it sends it off and then comes back. So that's solved usually in the game itself. So you usually press a button and then you see input instantly, and then it actually does what's happening on a server and then sends it back. And then it's like, okay, so both of those actions agree or they disagree, and it fixes itself. But generally you get instant feedback, which I don't think streaming services will be able to provide. So I think that would adversely affect gameplay and make it a bit sluggish. So yeah, I'm skeptical about that.
The last thing you would want is a delay on, say, like a platformer or something, and you click jump, and half a second later you jump, but you've already fallen off the cliff.
Yeah, it's not even half a second. Hey, like 50 milliseconds, it feels sluggish. Like instant feedback is really good on any game, even if it's turn-based. Like if you move the mouse and it's a little bit later, like it generally doesn't feel as good.
Yeah. As a programmer myself, still at university, still studying, I often have to Google solutions a lot of the time when an error pops up, or just I can't quite get the code working how I want it to. And I have to ask, is that commonplace in the industry itself to have to look just on Google, just look up just word for word the problem you're having and see if there's a solution out there? Or is it more so that once you're in the industry, you're expected just to know?
I literally Google stuff every day. Like you never stop learning. And the internet is just a trove of information. And honestly, you'd be doing yourself a disservice by not utilizing that, because, you don't stop learning after you go to university. University is like a baseline, and then after that, you sort of build on top of that. You build on your foundation. So I'm always learning new technologies and systems, and it's really useful to have the collective wisdom of the world like right at my fingertips. Yeah, it's another tool in the belt. Like seriously, Google stuff for everything, not even just games, like in life. Like it's great. So yeah, no, I do Google stuff.
Okay, and there's no expectation, it's not looked down upon or anything by having to Google. By the higher uppers who may not personally know programming itself, they don't just expect you to know everything.
I think my superiors personally would like me more to Google stuff, right? Because just pretending you know something and just talking the talk but not walking the walk, that's bad, right? You need to know your limitations so you can build on them, right? Especially if you're coming out of university, you're not going to know everything. Like, so yeah, Google stuff always.
Yeah, leaving university, you may know something. Hopefully, I'm coming to the end of it. I'm getting nervous.
Nah, you know stuff. It's good.
I can make the game ball walk. And coming back from university, how did you transfer your skills from university to the workplace? And would you say that there are skills that you had to personally learn outside of university just to be employable?
Yeah, so like I said, honestly, university is just the beginning of your learning. It's a foundation and you'll build on it as you progress your career. One thing that I think I didn't do as much of at university that I wish I had is version control. So that's version control is software that lets a bunch of developers sort of all work on a single project at the same time. And it lets you merge different pieces of code in seamlessly. Yeah, it's really useful. I couldn't work without it. I honestly use it on my own projects at home, and I'm only one person, because you can make little branches and things, and you can merge different stuff in, and it's really useful for tracking your progress on things. Yeah, it's a must. So yeah, it's absolutely essential if you want to be a programmer as part of a large team, or even small teams, or just by yourself. It's very useful. So version control, definitely useful to know.
Is that a software, version control, or is that just a term?
It's a term. So there are different software. So there's SVN is one, Git is one, Perforce. They're all different softwares that have different flavors of doing the same thing.
Because I know at the university we use GitHub and SourceTree.
Yeah, so GitHub is an online component, or it's sort of it uses Git internally, and it allows you to upload. It allows you to share Git projects essentially.
Yeah.
So on GitHub, you can, for instance, just download the project as a zip file, but also you can use Git to download the project as a Git project, and then you can use all the Git features on it. So that's nice.
It's very nice. They're making it much easier to use now. I know my professor has been doing in the industry for 30 years now. He used to tell us that when he first started teaching people at university, they'd have to submit assignments via floppy disk. And every time they wanted to make a change, it was this big, huge thing, to go back to level one and make a change. And he said now that he personally had lost a few of them because it's a physical thing. It's hard to keep track of. And
Yeah.
that nowadays, with things like Git and all that, and just being able to send things instantly through the internet has definitely made a huge difference.
Yeah, it's very useful.
So you work on personal titles outside of work. I think almost every game person does.
Yeah, that's right.
Do you do any of the design work for your personal titles as a programmer?
Honestly, most of my personal titles are sort of me or me and one other person. So yeah, like usually I do all of the design work. So yeah, I do.
Because you make for your job mobile games. Do your personal titles, are those also mobile games?
Some of them do. The one that I've released, Blast Ops, is an Android game. You can get it on the Google store on Android. Yeah, it's just a top-down tank shooter game, sort of like a bullet hell type thing.
And being in the mobile game industry, do you find that you limit yourself to just making mobile games outside of work just to keep the flow as what you know, or do you also work on console or PC games?
I haven't worked on console. PC, definitely, yeah. I've worked on little projects and stuff. Nothing that's really seen the light of day apart from little YouTube videos that I do. They're great for your resume, by the way. I would definitely recommend working on projects and uploading videos because you can just, link it in your resume or whatever, and then there's something tangible for someone to see, and it makes you stand out, and it's fun to watch. So would recommend that. Yeah, so PC. I would love to dev for Switch. Switch is hard to get into because you need to submit to Nintendo. We have to get a Nintendo developer license first, and then you have to submit your idea to Nintendo, and then they may accept it. And then I think you may have to buy like a dev kit as well. Yeah, so that'd be cool for the Switch.
Whereas Steam is like, take $100, upload what you want.
Yeah.
So do you find it difficult to try to match a proposed design due to limitations of the mobile device?
Designers are pretty savvy to the limitations of mobile devices, so it's rare they'd want to implement a mechanic that's sort of too CPU or GPU or RAM intensive. That said, even if it is, there's usually sort of a way to implement it. If you've got sort of enough time and resources, you can sort of think your way around a problem. But if it's completely out of scope or silly, you can usually sort of come up with a compromise with them that will work, but is also sort of pretty close to their design. So yeah, it's not super challenging. It sometimes comes up, but it's not too bad.
Just thinking about that, the limitations of mobile devices, I've seen in recent years they've actually come out with video game intended mobiles, and it'd be really cool to design for one of those. But would you personally spend the time making a game for those video game specific mobiles when your audience is just going to be someone who just has a regular Apple or Android?
Yeah, like it would depend on the market share of the device, right? Like, so if it was something really popular, that would be worth it. But yeah, like you say, if there aren't too many people with it, I mean, if you're designing for a niche and you're really passionate about your project and you think it's a cool idea, then it's probably worth doing. I mean, yeah, it's hard to say, to be honest.
But I guess if you do make one and you push the limits of that game-specific mobile, even if you don't sell very well, it's definitely experience.
That's true, and it also might be good as an indie dev to sort of focus on a niche. Like if you found a console that needs a good game of some kind, or like a device, sorry, that needs a sort of some kind of game, then you could do that, and then the small audience they have would all download your game, and that would be pretty good for you, I think. And you wouldn't have to compete with bigger studios.
I guess that's true. So 2020 has been a crazy year.
Crazy.
It has been a year we all hope to soon forget for some. Some good things, a lot of bad things. One of those bad things, the COVID pandemic that has affected everyone working, studying, just day-to-day life. And so I have to ask, how has the COVID pandemic personally affected your workflow as a programmer?
Yeah, so it was challenging. I had to take my PC and monitors home and set up remote working. And yeah, it's a bit less efficient all round. I didn't like working. It depends where you work. Like, I don't like working in my room because it's pretty small, compared to a big office. And there's no, you can't talk to your friends and stuff and riff ideas off them and talk about stuff. And yeah, it was challenging to transition. But there are advantages too. Like, yeah, obviously you don't have to drive to work, and that's different for different people. If you live in North Lakes and are trying to get to Brisbane City, then that would take an hour at best. So that would be, I know some of my colleagues love working from home, but personally, I didn't like it too much.
You prefer the social interactions and
Absolutely.
those little break room chats you have with people?
Yeah, and our office is really nice and has a lot of sunlight, whereas my room, it's not as good.
You say room in parentheses. You meant to say the dungeon.
My dungeon,
Your
that's it.
cave.
Yeah.
But did you find the shift from working in an office to working from home rough? The shift itself?
Yeah, like I said, I had to take all my PC and stuff home. Initially, I tried to get everything set up on my home PC, and it was just going to take more time than it would to just get all my stuff and bring it home, because I actually live really close to the office, so I can just go and get it pretty easily. So not as rough as others, I suppose, because I had to travel pretty far, and if there's anything they miss, they have to go back and get it or whatever. Yeah, I think it took a little bit of time for us to all kind of get set up and working at maximum efficiency.
Yeah, definitely not an overnight thing.
Yeah, it was incremental. Like you'd set up a bit and be like, oh, okay, this all works, but this doesn't, and like, okay, let's fix that. And there's only so many people who can be utilized to fix problems, so it took a bit of time, but
yeah. And I think that you're actually very lucky to be able to take your work PC home, because I know personally that if I had to work from home on my own PC, having Steam start up when my computer starts up, like, time to go to work. Although there was an update.
No, I don't. Yeah, I don't really have that problem. Like, I'm pretty good with self-control and like sort of knowing when it's work time and when it's playtime. The thing is, what you can do, this is a neat little trick, is that you can. Some people do this. You go, so you need to have a commute to like get your mind reset into work mode. So if you just walk down to the end of your street and then walk back, and at the time you leave, you're in house mode, and then when you come back, you're in work mode. Like, that really helps as a ritual to transition between work and home. And then you do that when you go home as well, so you're not sort of just like thinking about work when you're sleeping or whatever.
I definitely get that with university. Being in my final semester, I'll be at my computer ready to do uni, and then I'll play a game for 3 hours, and then I'll be lying in bed thinking about uni.
Yeah, little rituals really help your brain.
But I know that's definitely think I need to work on that. I've had to physically move my Switch out of arm's distance from my computer just so I can focus.
Yeah.
It can be rough. Working in the games and wanting to play games.
It depends what you're working on at the time. Like, if I'm working on something in my game or at work that I really enjoy, man, I will just smash that out so hard. Like, it's like playing a game for me. It's better than playing a game. Like, so yeah, sometimes it's really easy and sometimes it's a bit harder to stay focused depending on what you're doing.
I suppose the more passionate you are about something, the more you'll want to be doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
So as you said, obviously, the transition from work to home was not an overnight thing, but just you and the other people you work with closely, did you see a noticeable slowdown in the workflow before it got back to its regular pace?
Yeah, so initially we had a slowdown, obviously, because everyone's, growing pains. We're all trying to figure out how to work from home and stuff, and setting up not only your actual work stuff, but setting up your family life and stuff to work around you working at home, I suppose, was challenging. I didn't really have that problem, but some people did. And you never really, I guess communication is the biggest thing, and management, that's why they want everyone to work at work, because you can easily, there's just passive communication that goes on at work that you just don't get from working in different houses and offices and things. So yeah, that can be very challenging, not to be able to just walk up and ask someone a question and get an immediate response. That's also a good thing though, because you can be sort of disruptive if you're in the middle of a problem and somebody comes up and distracts you, and it's like, if I just had 2 minutes to figure that out, then I could, talk to them, but I have to talk to them immediately. So everything, falls out of your brain.
Yeah, I feel like being able to just turn to your left and ask Jimbo, how pushing error here, could you just quickly help me with that, to now having to either load up Discord or Zoom or something and type in his name and hopefully call him, and hopefully he's at his computer at the time. And
yeah, you only get a very small fraction as well of what you're saying out of your vocal tonality, right? You need body language as well, which helps in communicating stuff.
And I think you already answered this, but do you prefer working from home or at your studio?
Yeah, at the studio, 100%. I'm actually back at the studio now, and it's great because we're sort of, some days there's more COVID cases, and they're like, okay, so you can work from home, and it's nice and quiet at the moment, so it's really easy to focus. So that's a silver lining in all this, is that I get to, I live like 10 minutes away from my work by scooter. I scoot there every day. It's really good on fuel prices, by the way, if you got a scooter and you live close. So that is pretty good for me because it takes 10 minutes to get into work and I get the coffee machine all to myself. And it's nice and quiet. And I just like the office and the nice open office environment. And when people are there too, it's nice to sort of chat, upstairs when you're taking a break or like talking face to face is obviously very good. Yeah, so I prefer the office.
Is your office a tight-knit community? Like, do you know everyone you work with, or is it more so the gameplay programmers and the artists know each other?
We have a lot of a few social gatherings, less so recently because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're all pretty tight-knit. Yeah, like I hang out with a few of them outside of work. And generally we're all pretty casual and laid back and we, enjoy each other's company. And it's a very good sort of community and a good environment and a good vibe, I think.
Now, from that, have you actually met someone in your office that you hadn't met before due to just there being less people now? You just see someone like, I want to talk to you because you're the only one there.
No, I mean, again, we all sort of talk with each other, so there's not a lot of like, oh, okay, I'll start talking to this person. Like, yeah, you always interact with different people depending on what you're working on. Yeah, there's not too many unfamiliar faces there. We all sort of know each other.
Because I know only have been at university now, no actual workplace experience. When I picture a video game studio, I picture something from, you've seen the movie Grandma's Boy?
I haven't seen that. No, I've seen of it, but I haven't seen it.
So it's a big open room, but then each person has their own computer and some people have dividers, some people don't. And it's like, but then I've spoken to other people and they're just like, oh no, we sit at one big table, a bunch of programmers and we're all just around a table.
No, it's a bit bigger than a table, but it's not like a monolithic structure either.
Or I'll picture something like the TV show The Office. And it's like, everyone have their own desk spotted around the room or...
Yeah, we have desks.
You have your own personal space.
Yeah.
Okay. How long have you been in the video game industry professionally?
Yeah, so I've worked, before I worked at Gameloft, I worked at a company called Euclidean. So they do some game stuff. Personally, I worked 2 years and 8 months. And at Gameloft, somewhere between 2 and 3 years, pushing on to 3 years now.
Okay. You've been in the design industry professionally now for half a decade?
Yeah, I guess so. Wow. It's been a while. Sheesh.
I tried to make you feel like that way.
Yeah, that's it. Oh man, I'm fast approaching 30, so.
But I have to ask, what is the main advice you would give to people getting into the industry? For both people currently starting their degrees at university, and then also those who either don't have a degree or have graduated from a degree and are just trying to get straight into the industry.
So starting their degrees, I would say it's pretty straightforward. Just absorb information. Honestly, university will teach you pretty well. So it's good to have your own side projects as well. If you're really interested in games, then it's fun to make your own side projects because you can really riff off the ideas that you and stuff that's taught to you at university. So yeah, side projects are good. I don't know, work on your grades, I guess, if you're graded. But in terms of graduated and unsure of your next step, it's honestly, the games industry is a difficult industry to get into because there are a lot of people wanting to get into the industry but not too many jobs. That goes especially for Brisbane. There's a handful of companies here and there's probably a few indie studios, but yeah, it's probably in your best interest to try, maybe if you can't get a job here, try seek employment in other states like Melbourne or even overseas, because there's a lot more stuff going on there. Like I went to PAX last year and it just baffled me how many sort of studios and stuff, like all the stuff that was going on in Melbourne, in indie studios, compared to Brisbane. So yeah, looking in Melbourne would be a good idea. And yeah, overseas, I'm sure there's more. So another thing I did was we've talked about this, but I've made my own game, Blast Ops, which I did for a year before I started my professional career. And that helped me break into the industry. I didn't even make it for that reason. Like I just made it because it was cool and I wanted to. Yeah, but it turns out it's really good for your resume and your portfolio if you have a game, something tangible for a potential employer to pick up and play and look at and see. So I would definitely advise working on your portfolio.
Obviously, networking is very important. Everyone should be networking. I had a really good thing previously, which was it isn't necessarily who you know in the studio, it's who knows what you know. So it's always important to know people. You know someone, they have have a job available. That's good and all, but you've also got to make sure that they understand what you know. So you always get your work out there with the portfolios, and just you meet someone in the studio, send them your LinkedIn, send them your Itch.io page, send them your Steam page or something.
Yeah, that's good advice. Like, yeah, again, your portfolio reflects, how proficient you are. So it's good to share that. Yeah, I know some people who sort of got jobs, well, not necessarily got jobs, but got their foot in the door because of who they knew, and then they could demonstrate what they knew to the person. So yeah, I'd say that's pretty good advice.
Would you think it's a good idea for university students to perhaps even start an indie studio together and try to work on games that way? Or do you think it'd be better for them to reach out to other people?
Absolutely, yeah, that'd be a really cool idea to go and make your own games. Yeah, I would, if that's what you want, if that's your passion, and you have a cool idea, and you're willing to put in the work, because it's hard. Yeah, that would be a pretty cool avenue to go down.
Passion project sort of makes things seem smaller than they are, but you want to have a project that you are passionate about, something you want to wake up and work on, and something you want to display. Because I have many games that I've worked on at university that I'm not very proud of in just the overall quality and how they've ended up, and I'm very nervous to share things, those. Man. You should have seen the code, man. It was all over the place. My naming conventions.
It's cool. It's a learning experience, uni.
Yeah, but I definitely am thinking that you want to have the confidence, and even if you're unhappy with how something is, put it up anyway, because you may not know, someone could be looking. If you make a crappy FPS game and you're not very happy with it, but the bots work, the shooting works, or the inventory system all works, but you're not really pushing yourself, someone may just be looking for that. They may be looking for a junior programmer to work on an FPS.
Sure, and it's also good to upload those videos and things, because you can look back on them and be like, oh look, I've improved, because you barely get that sort of knowing that you've improved or gotten better and stuff like that. So yeah, honestly, there's no harm in uploading it. Like, it's not like someone's going to see it and be like, oh my goodness, why would we hire that guy?
That's it. I think that's the biggest thing, is a bad game, or not even a bad game, but a game that you're not necessarily proud of isn't a not hiring person point.
Yeah, like the biggest thing is just completing a game, right? Like that's really hard to do, because the last 10% of game development is actually the last 90% of it, because it's really hard to do that. So if you can do that and finish it and keep it within scope and release it so people can play it, that's really impressive.
Mm-hmm. I think that's definitely the biggest thing for us, is just to show people what you've got.
Yeah, sure.
I could tell you, hey, I have a degree in games. Oh, could you show us what you've done? No.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can have a bit of paper, but you got to show what you know.
Yeah, I definitely recommend working on your portfolio. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's all there really is to it, just to show what you know.
Exactly.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Bryce, for joining me on this. I always say this, and I always mean it, but talking to someone in the industry, I never crap on university, because I've learned things that I never knew, and it's taught me so much. It's taken me so far from where I was 3 years ago to now. But speaking to you, someone in the industry, I learned so much that I don't think I will. So much I don't think I would have even gotten at university, or even just personally. But speaking to you and asking these questions has given me and the people listening an insight into the industry, and it really is just crazy just how much information you're giving us, and it is so useful, and I can't thank you enough for coming and talking to us.
It's really nice. Thank you for saying. I'm glad to be here to share some of my experiences. And hopefully you and your listeners can get something out of it, because that'd be good. Yeah.
It'd be great. And because you may not think it. You may think yourself just a lonely gameplay programmer, but you are what I aspire to be. You are in the industry. That's where I want to be.
So many good feels. Carter.
But again, thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to talk to us.
You're very welcome.
Are there anything you'd like to plug?
I think I'd like to plug, well, if you felt like it, you could play my game Blast Ops. I mentioned it. It's a game on Google Play. You can download it. It's just a little shooter. It's kind of fun. Yeah, give it a go if you like it.
That's crazy, because the link of it just appeared on screen.
Wow.
Well, thank you everyone for listening to another episode of Ready Start Podcast, and I hope you all have a good day. Thank you. Goodbye.
Yeah.